So we seem to be set. And now that we're on, just got to introduce myself here. So I've changed my channel name recently. All right, it's not the band name anymore. It is now it's a proper channel name now. It's Mr. Spade. It's a proper gimmick. And I've had that band name for a long, long time, so I think I've got the right to make that happen. Right? So let's focus on what we're going to do today. I just want to say first off, I'm testing my new setup here. I plan to do a lot more streaming, as you guys already know. I've talked about it a few times. I've got a very small handful of a following here on YouTube, so if you're watching this, thank you for the support. And if you've come across this in the YouTube landscape and you're wondering what this is, well, you know, this is a music channel. I do a lot of reviews, and we try to have fun here. So basically, that's more or less what we do. And without further ado, I want to talk about what I want to talk about today, which is a very much close to my heart sort of a topic, okay? And you'll see it in the background, but I want to just go there and kind of start scrolling here and there so we can talk about it. So we're looking at guitars today. All right, we're going to be looking at some of my thoughts on the 2019 models from Gibson. And definitely get a feel of what this new setup feels like, huh? Got a new mic in front of me. Got myself a little bit of lighting going on. Nothing too crazy. Trying out the green screen. Haven't done the green screen on my channel yet. It's my first time. So if you're joining me now, once again, thank you very much. And bear with me as I try and work out the kinks. All right, so yeah, this is Mr. Spade coming at you live. And I'm going to be reviewing a little bit of the Gibson lineup because I've got the pleasure and very much the privilege of having checked out a lot of these guitars and having owned, I think out of the 2019 lineup, 3 of them, which is crazy to think about. It's awesome as a guitar fan and somebody who grew up playing a lot of different Les Paul shaped guitars and who was very much into the G type. Yeah, it feels awesome. I mean, this is one of the few things about adulthood that I don't mind. So that's got to be one of the good things, right? Cool. So let's have a little bit of a look at what we're talking about here. As you might have noticed, here we are on the homepage of Gibson, right? We've got a lot of cool things here. You've got your man, Mark Ignacy here. I don't know if you've heard of him. If you haven't seen the memes, well, he's one of the most authentic guys we know, okay? So show him some respect, all right? I think Gibson did really cool hiring Mark Ignacy, to be very honest. When you consider the fact that he was at Norman's Guitars for such a long time and doing all these great videos at Norman's Guitars, which is a guitar channel that does cover a lot of vintage instruments and a lot of very special instruments. You know, they've got history to them, and, you know, I guess Mark Ignacy is a big part of that, right? So, look, talking about today and moving on to the main topic, I want to go ahead and look at some of Gibson's best and tell you about the whole 2019 Part 1 versus 2019 Part 2, which not a lot of people talk about because, you know, since they did their whole revamp last year, it became 2019 Part 2, which was, you know, the return of Gibson. But, yeah, I've had the pleasure to play for a long period of time, at least a couple of the first part of 2019. We're talking still in the modern era, not the JC era of stuff. And, yeah, I did get to experience that firsthand. There's a lot to talk about there. Like, honestly speaking, as somebody who had that sort of an experience, trust me, you don't really understand what it's like until you've spent a lot of time understanding, you know, just where everything fits. First impressions are not everything, that's for sure, okay? So it's not going to be so much that you try something out and the first time you've got your hands on it, you understand everything about it. It needs to go through a whole bunch of different things, and it needs to go through a whole bunch of different experiences for you to be able to say, you know what, we're set. And now I know whether I really like this or I don't, okay? So when we talk about that, honestly speaking, there's nothing wrong with the first part of 2019. Absolutely nothing, all right? There are certain things that you may or may not prefer, which is totally fine. And I think one thing that Gibson's always done really, really well is kind of try and cater to all of us different folks, people who prefer all these different things. And I guess that's really interesting, right? Because more is more. If you have more of a choice, you're always going to be happy because you have more of a chance to get something that you like, right? So really nothing wrong with that, and I think they've only gotten better, and I've really enjoyed that part of it. So going from there, I'm going to go straight into the first part of 2019, which is represented by the Modern Collection, okay? And while the standard from the first part of 2019 is no longer here, I can give you a few thoughts about that and tell you a little bit about how I feel, and maybe pull up my 2019 standard and go to the Blueberry Burst. This is my favorite one, like absolutely my favorite one, and hopefully you guys can see this. So let me pull up the Blueberry Burst. What an incredible finish. Look at that. That's something. You know what I mean? And I was lucky enough to own and play a 2019 standard, and I have one at the moment. This is one of the first lineup of standards, so this is still with all the modern features and everything. And one thing that a lot of people don't understand about these guitars is that they're actually still quite traditional in nature, and they're just spec'd out to the highest amount. Like when you look at the tops, you're going to see, you know, AAA tops, and you're going to see a lot of contemporary colors as well as the traditional ones. So people don't really understand that, because people seem to think that, oh, you know, because it's meant to be for the contemporary player, everything is aimed at that. A lot of things are, but this is more like a balance between traditional and modern. Now let me talk about my experience, okay? These are awesome guitars. They honestly are spec'd out in a way that on paper, for me, is pretty much perfection. Okay, so when I say perfection, I'll say something like the fact that they'll give you a compound radius, and let me zoom in here so you can see what I'm talking about. Let's go over here. So when you look at the fretboard right here, look, from up here, from nut right to the 12th fret, it's your traditional Gibson fretboard radius. So when you play it, it feels very similar. But as you go from the 12th to the 16th and up, it just gets flatter and flatter. Okay, so it goes up to, well, it's just way flatter, which is much better for shredding. Okay, and it's a very modern sort of fretboard radius, and it might not be, you know, out of place on an Ibanez sort of a thing. I don't know if this was the best idea. I feel like it makes a really, really good balance, because people do tend to solo more here. But in my experience, the way that I felt, while it's really, really nice, if you're coming from a big, you know, set of years playing traditional type guitars, and you're used to the consistency of the same fretboard radius, it can be very jarring. Once you get used to it, really cool. But at first, it can really be very, very jarring. Now let's talk about the neck a little bit. Okay, so I want to talk about the neck, because there's really not much else to address here apart from the fact that, you know what, these don't come with pickguards on by factory, but you do get them in the box, so you can put them on. And obviously you've got all the push-pull features, which I really don't want to go into, because I know it's like so much to talk about there. You know, you pull it out, it's going to sound like a P90. There's a switch at the back that you can change that's going to make it sound like a proper single coil, and you can flip between inner and outer coils. There's a lot of modern trickery going on there, and I think that's the amazing part, because you really do have some very high quality tones. They sound super, super nice. Okay, but let's go back to what I was talking about. I want to talk about the neck, because to be honest, if you're thinking about the modern collection, in general, the neck is the biggest difference that you will find. As somebody who does a lot of recording and a lot of live stuff and a lot of jamming, really, this neck is something that you'll have to get used to if you're not used to asymmetrical necks, or if you're not used to, let's say, if you're not used to playing with your hand cupped like this, okay? So I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this, so I want to make this very, very clear. If you are a player who is primarily used to holding the neck like this, with your thumb going right up the top, with your lower fingers here, this is going to be an extremely comfy neck. So when you play like full-on chords, it's very comfy. But if you are more of a punk rock, alternative rock player, and you have a lot of like bar chords that you play, and you know you're doing power chords all up and down the fretboard and everything, honestly speaking, my opinion is this might not be the best neck for you, especially if you have smaller hands, okay? Because my experience was my thumbs used to get very, very cramped down here, because I was constantly trying to do the power chords. And if you're doing a bar chord and you're moving up and down like that, what happens is your finger right here, it basically, there's some friction, okay? Because the neck is not flat like this. It's not like an even radius. It goes like this, and it goes straight. It slopes straight down. So the lower part is like a straight down kind of a thing, and you're always slipping a little bit. So there you go. That's the biggest downside of this guitar. And that's only if you are somebody who's playing a lot of power chords or who is like playing a lot of those. If you were playing more in drop C or drop D and you were doing a lot of those chords, I don't think you'd have as much of a problem. I certainly didn't. I was still able to get used to the neck. After you play with it a little while, you do very much get used to it and you feel it less and less. And I think if I would have stuck out with it more, I would have definitely gotten used to it a lot more. Apart from this is a perfectly spec'd guitar, okay? Because the weight relief on this is incredible. Like, these guitars are weight relieved so well. So there's no chance that you're going to get one that's like 10 pounds or like even 9.5 pounds. I haven't seen one that was that was over 9 pounds. So most of them were at really good, really good weights. And the weight really matters for somebody like me who plays, longer sessions. And it's going to matter to a lot of you, right? We're going to get to the original collection, and you're going to be surprised about what I have to say about the weight on those guitars, okay? You'll be very, very surprised, because when you see all the things that Gibson did to make a guitar like this, weight relieved and be at a pleasant weight, a pleasant balance, and all those things, you'll see that really there's not that much to worry about. Anyway, so this is my favorite in the modern collection from the first half of 2019, which was the original standard. I had to go on here because obviously it's no longer in the Gibson lineup. But now what you guys need to know is the same modern neck profile is on the Les Paul Modern, which is sort of the same guitar reimagined, right? It comes with solid colors now, so it's not exactly the same, but it's still very pretty. You've got some very, very nice red and blue kind of solid colors. Wine red's like my favorite Gibson finish, so there you go. And I think it still has the asymmetrical neck profile, the one that I don't mind it, but it's not the perfect neck for me. That's the best way to put it. And they're still very nice. They're still very, very comfortable. It just depends on what you want to play. So if you're more of an alternative player who's doing a lot of like power chords, I don't know. It's kind of an adjustment. But once you do get used to it, then it's fine. All right, so looking from there, let's look at a couple of these other options here. You've got the Les Paul Jr. Tribute Double Cut. These are classics. Like, you can't touch them. There's nothing bad that I can say about these. These P90s, they sound great. They're not noisy like people say they are. I thought it was, because everybody would be like, well, a P90 is just a big single coil, so when you overdrive it, it's very noisy. Not really that noisy, to be honest, because distortion by itself is always going to be a little bit noisy, right? But it's not really that noisy. These are very, very nice pickups, and you can always control a little bit more. And you know what? If you were ever having problems with a single coil being noisy when you're on distortion, just get yourself a noise gate, dude. Problem solved. Instantly. It's quiet, and it doesn't affect your sustain if you know how to dial in the settings. It's very easy. We look at the special Tribute Double Cut. It's the same guitar, but with two P90s instead of one. I think the one P90 is a more raw look, so it's very cool. It's a nice feeling thing. You've got the Classic. Boy, have I got a lot to say about the Classic. Honestly speaking, the Les Paul Classics, I feel at the moment are... Look, there's only one downside with these guitars, okay? I'll tell you what. Now, these are weight relieved with their traditional 9-hole method, which is actually the lightest, not the lightest, that's the wrong way to say it. It's actually the most mild weight relief treatment that they have, okay? So they just punch in like 9 holes into the body. But here's the difference, okay? It actually doesn't make that much of a difference. The guitar's not that much lighter. Spoiler alert, the Classic is just about as heavy as most of the other standards today, which are not weight relieved at all. I've played traditionals, which are supposed to be the heaviest, right, from last year, that were lighter than this. So that's just been my experience. Maybe your experience could vary, but I don't know why they would do that, because these are supposed to be more of a, in my perception, maybe I could be wrong, but these are supposed to be more like a 60s, early 70s sort of a spec, where you have a nice, thin sort of a neck, and you got your slim taper 60s neck, very, very cool, nice finishes as well. Not really crazy flame tops, but beautiful plain tops with grain. I love the grain tops on these. These are beautiful. I really wanted to get a Classic, but they were way heavier than the ones that didn't have weight relief on them, which makes absolutely no sense. So, Gibson, if you ever come across this small video in the middle of the internet, which probably is not going to get that much traction, to be fair, please work on that. Like, it would be awesome for me to get a Classic in the future. I really dig them. especially the fact that they're so raw with their uncovered pickups and the zebras. It's just awesome, right? I've always thought they've had a very Slash sort of a vibe. I'm more into Slash from Velvet Revolver, so not really the kind of guitar Slash was playing back in the GNR days. And here we go, the Studio. The Les Paul Studio is my favorite Les Paul. It's always been. It's the first one I started out on, and the first one I had was a 2008 wine red like this one, but with gold hardware. No binding. The Studio is the best Les Paul for me. First off, it's a little bit lighter. But generally, right, it's a little bit lighter. But second, the feeling when you play one of these, first off, the necks are nice and slim tapered, but they also don't feel like they cost a lot, so you're not scared. You know, you're not scared to really go nuts, you know? And Les Pauls have a lot of bells and whistles on them. So when you look at something like a Studio with its inlays and its pickguard and everything that you see up here, it's a massive, massive understatement to say this is not, that this is a pretty guitar. It's a very pretty guitar. Really some of the best ones. I mean, I recommend the Smokehouse Burst, something that I never got to own. The BBQ Burst, which is a 2019 one with binding, which I have. It's my number one. Or even the newer ones, which no longer have the binding, but damn, are they beautiful. Look at the depth. Look at the grain on these. The grain on these is incredible. Like the way they stain them. Holy crap. They're awesome. So that's what I got to say about the Studio. And Tribute, very similar to Studio, but difference is satin. And the necks are going to be round and thick, chunky necks. I've tried those. Not my thing. The very thick necks are not my thing. I don't mind a little bit thick, but too much thickness is too much thickness for me, right? But these are, they do come in more bursty sort of colors. So you do have two-tone, and as opposed to the Studio, which is like one-tone. And you do have very nice satin feeling ones. So I think in this one, Tobacco is probably my favorite, but next a bit big for me. All right, not going to talk much about these, but the SG Modern, I remember I had a comment from like one dude who was saying you'd never talk about SGs. Or I came here to look at an SG, but you didn't even talk about that. My time is wasted. All right, dude, this one's for you. Okay? Hear me out. The SGs are great. I just selfishly don't talk about them that much because my experience with them sitting down has been that they neck dive a lot. I know they're classic guitars and they're pretty amazing, and I know that not all of them neck dive, right? But neck dive is just one of the things that I can't take, right? So I don't really talk about them that much, which is unfair, I gotta say. So let me talk about them a little bit. So this is the SG Modern, okay? Got all the modern appointments like we discussed. But look at this beautiful blueberry burst with a dark edge on it. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Such a classy guitar. And I saw a review on this one. Apparently these are supposed to be really, really, really good. And I think the price tag also reflects that. All right, moving on to Special Tribute. $1,000 guitars. You've got Tributes in white. These are awesome as well. My only problem is I can't own Les Pauls without the trapezoid inlays. I'm very much used to those. They define like a Les Paul for me. So I could always take like an Explorer or a Firebird with, no, not even a Firebird. Maybe just an Explorer with dot inlays, but I can't do Les Pauls with dot inlays. It's just, I don't know. I'm crazy. Right? So you still have some of the other things like you've got in the Modern Collection, the SG Standard, right? Beautiful guitars. Look at the deep red on this. I love it. It's perfect. SG Tribute, so you've got a nicely spec'd SG with dot inlays. Very cool. ES339. Let's look at that one. Always wanted to try one of these. I think if I ever come across a Dave Grohl or a Trini Lopez sort of a model, because I don't like the F hole, but I don't mind the diamond hole. Enough talking about holes, Mr. Spade. All right. Let's go over here. ES339 figured. Wow. Hey, that looks pretty cool. Right? It's got the inlays, so I don't mind those. And obviously, you've got the Hummingbirds, which I know nothing about, but they're top-of-the-line acoustic instruments. The B2s, I have a dream to maybe own an Explorer B2 someday. I don't have a Gibson Explorer yet. I've got an Epiphone one, which is excellent. I want to do a review on that in the future, so if you're listening, I will put that out. Sub to my channel. Wouldn't mind it. Drop me a like. Wouldn't hurt you too much. Take out like 0.5 seconds out of your time. Help Mr. Spade out a little bit, right? Check this out. So, the B2s are amazing value as well. Like, look at that. kind of guitar you get for this. I mean, I don't know if you guys have tried Explorers before, but after the Les Paul, this is my favorite guitar. They just feel incredible. They look badass. And they sound amazing. They have a tone, by the way. All the Explorers I've played, they've got their own tone. They don't sound like Les Pauls. They don't sound like Vs. They don't sound like SGs. They have a tone. And they sound incredible. And Explorers are the reason I got into guitars in the first place. Alright, so I want to go now from here to my original collection. Let's talk about that a little bit. Here we go. So we are looking at the original collection, and this is where things get really, really exciting. Okay, not going to go through every model in detail like I just did on the modern collection, but I do want to pick a few. I want to talk about those, okay? Before we get to the Les Pauls, we'll get to them. I want to talk about the Explorers, okay? So we can start over there, and let's have a look over here. Perfection. All right, so looking at these, we've got ourselves the 70s V and 70s Explorers. Look at that beautiful white. And these come with binding on the neck as well. So pretty, dude. These are so awesome. One of the best things about the original collection, these guitars. Look at the V. I honestly think there's very few guitar shapes that you can make, even super ugly ones, that look bad in white, like in an Olympic or an Alpine white. That's the dream. My dream is to get me a white Explorer someday, if I can save up and not have to sell my blood. All right. So there's that. Then you've got yourself the obviously the standard lineup of Explorer. You've got yourself your 1699 Explorer, which is pretty cool. And when you talk about that, you've got yourself a nice wood-figured, Carina-looking body. It's not Carina, but it does remind you of those classic Carina Explorers. More of the 58 kind of a vibe when it first came out, which is awesome. And I've already raved too much about Explorers. I don't want to talk about them more than I have to, but they're amazing. Let's talk about the Firebirds. I tried one of these out super recently, and I've been into Firebird since I saw Tim Skold playing those. And those specifically are my new dream, so to speak. I do really want to add a Firebird because when I played it, what a feeling. Like, it doesn't feel like any guitar you've ever played before. Like, you actually have to, the neck has to be up here, And it's just the way they sound. There's no other Gibson guitars that sound like this. This is literally the only Gibson guitar which has a neck through, okay? And with that neck through, you've got these mini humbuckers that just scream, okay? They've got their own tone. I don't think there's any guitar in the world that sounds like a Firebird. Seriously speaking, it is such a cool instrument. And if you think the Gibson one is cool, wait till you see the Epiphone one. Because it costs almost nothing compared to this big number right here. But it's essentially, from what I get, almost the same thing. You'll still have your regular differences, like the nitrocellulose versus poly finish. You're going to have, obviously, like the neck that's slightly different. And the pickups are going to be good, but probably not as good as the American-made Gibson pickups, which are, I think, always premium, except for one or two models. But yeah, the Firebird is amazing, guys. You got to check that out. You got the Flying V right here. We've talked about that. We talked about the 339, but we didn't talk about the 335. So basically, you've got those in the original collection as well. Can't talk about this without talking about that, right? So then I want to go up here and talk a little bit about your super nice SG Special. Okay, again, you've got yourself a P90 SG, Pelham Blue, with binding. Very, very cool. I like the binding and dot inlays, but I can't do dot inlays with no binding, which is weird. You know how many Strats I own? 0. I have no Strats. Not that I have something against Strats. Well, first off, they're not my thing, really, but inlays mean a lot to me, I guess. It's aesthetics, and I'm guilty as charged. So SG Standard 61, of course, original lineups. You want to go back to the 61 SG, the original 61 Les Paul, so to speak, right? Very, very cool guitar. Not really my thing because it just looks too stacked with the big vibrola and the look at this bridge and everything. I think it looks cool, but I don't know. I like guitars where you can see a lot more of the wood and the wood grain and that kind of prettiness comes through. I don't like a lot of knobs and dials and, you know, one of the reasons I'm not into Strats, right? Like the pickguard takes up like 70% of the guitar. At least that's what it looks like to me. I'm sure it's not 70%. Don't quote me on that. I know there's going to be one guy who comments and he's like, it's not 79 or not 70%. You know, relax, dude. It's fine. We're all allowed to have preferences. I respect yours. So, that being said, you've got one with a sideways vibrola and you've got one with a maestro vibrola. Have no idea what those are, so I'm not going to talk much about them. I know sideways is pretty literal, so it probably just, you know, you do your trem sideways, but I don't want to put my foot in my mouth this early. So you got the SG Standard 61. Now this is your standard without the without any sort of trem system, which is cool, right? Now, let's move on up here and let's talk about the main course. There's too many guitars here to cover, but I want to talk about the Les Paul Standard 60s and the Standard 50s, okay? I want to start with the 50s because I want to take them one by one and break them down. So this is Standard 50s, okay? You've got two types here. You've got your ones with the humbuckers and you've got ones with the P90s. You guys already know about these, but my experience playing them was pretty great. I didn't play them for a long time, but I felt super good about them. Neck, not really my thing because I'm not into the bigger necks. However, I know a lot of people are, okay? Look, my hands are not the biggest. They're not very small either. Trump reference. But if you do prefer faster necks, I feel like the Gibson 60s profile for some people is perfect, whereas for some people it's not going to be substantial enough. So some people just love to play with their hands up here and really cup the neck, really get that feel. You want to go for a 50s. You've got your gold top. You've got a beautiful Heritage Cherry Sunburst. These are, let's let it load for a second. And all right, we've got tobacco first. So let's have a look at the tobacco one. There we go. This is a tobacco burst. Beautiful. I still haven't found a tobacco burst for me. Hopefully someday I do. And going back to Cherry Sunburst, here we go. Very cool guitars. Very cool. These look very Ice-T. I feel like Ice-T and Heritage Cherry are not that different anymore. But I'm sure Heritage Cherry is just a little bit more red. Now, apart from the neck, what are the other differences? The Clouson tuners, right? So you got your tuners up here. Let me zoom in for you guys so you can see. Wait a second. Here we go. Now you should see it nice and big down here. See it? So these plastic tuners, these Clousons are very, very vintage, very classic. I had a traditional with these tuners on. I dug them. They were cool. But, I mean, that's where the difference is in. Okay? These are non-weight relieved guitars. So solid bodies, which means that, first off, don't think that they're going to be super heavy. They will most likely be heavier than weight relieved guitars. You know, if you have no weight relief, yes, it's going to be heavier. Most likely. But it's not necessary, okay? And let me explain to you exactly what I mean by saying that, okay? So a lot of this has to do with wood density, okay?